At 78, I moved to the Pines, seeking connection and simplicity, only to discover that the greatest regrets often linger in the unfulfilled relationships we take for granted. As I sit in the sunny courtyard of the Pines retirement community, I often reflect on the whirlwind of emotions that accompanied my decision to move here. At 78, I thought this transition would be a wise choice, simplifying my life and allowing me to foster connections with others in my age group. I was greeted with optimism, the prospect of new friendships, engaging activities, and a supportive environment. Yet as the days turned into weeks, I started to notice a juxtaposition of gleeful anticipation and an undercurrent of regret that began to burden my heart. It dawned on me that while the choice to reside in a retirement home seemed practical, it also opened the door to many hidden struggles, particularly the longing for friendships that I had long since neglected while being engrossed in the demands of my previous career as a social worker. Bubbling alongside my reflections was Frank, my lively neighbor, whose adventures in life have only recently become dimmed by his isolation. We often share laughter over his vibrant Hawaiian shirts, but beneath that playful exterior, Frank struggles with the distance from his previous life, filled with the bustling streets of his beloved city. I traded the sound of honking taxis for the soft hum of our old bingo nights, he jokes, but as he glances wistfully at the potted plant in our common area, I see the shadow of regret flicker across his eyes. He opened up to me one afternoon about his worries, confessing that while he also hoped to embrace this new chapter, he never realized how much he would miss the pulse of life he once thrived in. Observing Frank has reminded me of the importance of staying connected to our passions, even when life circumstances suggest that we should slow down. Then there's Mabel, whose sprightly spirit offers comforting warmth like a cup of freshly brewed chamomile tea. With her endearing curls and floral dresses, she seems to radiate joy, yet she too carries the weight of unmade decisions. Mabel confided in me one day about her struggle to socialize after the recent loss of her husband. "I always thought there would be time," she said, her voice laced with regret. I nodded, remembering the countless opportunities we both allowed to slip through our fingers. Her story serves as a beautiful yet bittersweet reminder of how essential it is to be proactive about nurturing relationships. Life doesn't wait for us to catch up. It continues to rush forward, often leaving us to grapple with what could have been if we had just given a phone call or stepped outside our comfort zone. In my own quiet moments, I've reflected on the 6 personal regrets that have crept into my consciousness since relocating here. The first is the regret of not prioritizing relationships sooner. I think back on the family gatherings I missed while fully immersed in my career, and my belief that the hustle was necessary for personal fulfillment. Now, I realize that it was often the gentle moments spent with loved ones, not the accolades, that brought the deepest joys. I vowed to change that. I've started scheduling weekly lunches with the new friends I've made here, the younger activities coordinators often teasing me about my choice to forego the macaroni and cheese for a vegetable medley. It turns into laughter rather than sorrow, a way to reclaim what I once let pass by. At times I find myself regretting my decision to remain passive when isolation began to cling to my heart like ivy around a tree. It was all too easy to retreat into solitude rather than reach out. But with every light-hearted conversation I share with Frank, or the delightful chats with Mabel about our favorite books, I am reminded of the empowerment that comes through intentional engagement. I've taken to urging others too, encouraging them to break through their silos. Mabel began hosting tea parties, and Frank recently signed up for the photography class that had been lingering as a thought in his mind for months. I feel a renewed sense of purpose as I witness these small yet significant changes unfold around us. However, I also come to terms with the vital, yet often overlooked, regret of neglecting my own hobbies and passions. In the hustle of daily obligations, I buried my love for painting, convinced it was a luxury I could afford to sideline. Yet one weekend, I found an old easel and a pack of paint in my closet and decided to do something different. I invited Frank and Mabel to join me in what turned out to be an unforgettable afternoon, filled with stories, laughter, and splashes of color across canvases. It's remarkable how rekindling a long-forgotten joy has added a splash of vibrancy to my routine. and it now serves as a reminder that I can dictate my experience here, regardless of my environment. Through these shared insights and growing connections, I'm beginning to unravel the layers of regret that once ensnared my spirit. By embracing my experiences alongside Frank and Mabel, I am reminded that it is never too late to mold our lives with meaning. Moving forward, I aim to be an advocate for seizing opportunities without fear. Instead of lamenting past choices, I choose to create spaces for joy and engagement, to walk alongside those who fear daunting change, and to softly guide them through their own reflections of what might lie ahead. After all, life's tapestry is built on the richness of our connections, and I intend to stitch mine with bold, vibrant threads. As I settled into my new routine at the Pines, I quickly began to grapple with the profound reality of lost independence, a feeling that crept in more than I expected. Gone were the spontaneous decisions that colored my world. Instead, I found myself adapting to a preordained structure dictated by community schedules and rules. Daily choices, once a source of empowerment, now felt constrained. I remember one morning heading to breakfast, only to be reminded by a sign that the dining hall would be closed for renovations. The far from ideal scramble for muffins from the communal kitchen reminded me of how precious even little decisions, like where or what to eat, had once been. Even simple pleasures, like enjoying my morning coffee in my own time, were stripped away and replaced with regimented, collective experiences. It was a stark revelation, causing me to ponder the importance of autonomy in the later years of life. Reflecting on this with Mabel one afternoon while she arranged fresh flowers in our common lounge, I could see the same realization dawning on her. "It feels as if we've exchanged our independence for security," she mused, slightly perturbed. I couldn't help but agree. We both understood it wasn't just about geographical relocation. This was a monumental shift in how we engaged with our lives daily. I began to recognize that reclaiming my independence and self-decision-making, even within the confines of the Pines, relied on a mindset shift, an active choice to seize control where I could. I started to encourage other residents to cultivate their routines, whether that's hosting a game night or simply going for a walk, to add a sense of personal agency back into their days. This turning point offered new avenues for engagement, transforming my quiet resignation into a blossoming narrative of agency. Frank, with his vividly colored shirts and adventurous spirit, resonated with this notion too. One sunny afternoon, as he flipped through old travel journals in his cozy corner of the lounge, I noticed how he had fondly captured moments from his past. "Did you know I once trekked through the Amazon?" he chuckled, the sparkle in his eye illuminating his age. But then, he lowered his voice and shared a whispered confession, revealing how far removed his current life felt from the thrilling risk of adventure he craved. His home, the vibrant city filled with buzzing energy, felt worlds apart from the structured stillness of the Pines. This was his own personal tug of war, balancing the pull of safety with the desire for exploration. It dawned on both of us that navigating this phase could encourage even greater latitude for independence if we dared to re-engage with the world outside our community. Elaborating on the vitality of independence to Frank, I suggested small excursions to explore beyond the walls of the Pines, involving everyone we could rally. A weekend journey to that old nature trail, the one covered in wildflowers, could work wonders, I suggested brightly. Excitement surged through Frank's eyes, and soon the idea began to brew into something more than a plan. It became a project. With Mabel's organizing prowess and Frank's penchant for photography, we started regaining control over our lives as we strategized an open-air adventure that connected us back to the essence of who we were. Collaborating on this project rekindled our independence, and we melded our collective enthusiasm into tangible ideas, invigorating our spirits and embracing the concept that living doesn't end with relocation. As the days passed, adapting to this newfound flow of responsibility became a healing process. I began fine-tuning my daily routine. I would rise earlier to enjoy a longer breakfast before joining a morning yoga class with Mabel, and in the afternoons, I'd take my devices to the rose garden, allowing my creative thoughts to flow uninhibited as I committed colors to canvas. Each act took on deeper significance in the wake of my previous sense of passivity, evolving into a proclamation that chose to challenge the status quo. Through this lens of intentional engagement, I found immense solace, slowly dismantling the weight of regret that clung to my spirit like an unwelcome guest. No longer could the absence of independent choices overshadow the joy of self-created opportunities. Amidst this sea of changes, I frequently paused to reflect on the beauty of communal life. Although it did come with its share of challenges, each face around the dining table offered stories of resilience, humor, and hope that transformed the atmosphere from one of mere survival to an uplifting narrative of friendship. I sought to deepen connections. A shared laughter over a misfired bingo call between Frank and Mabel turned into a cherished moment of camaraderie, and the communal dinners, once an obligation, morphed into lively events that sparked joyous interactions, forging an environment where togetherness blossomed on the foundation of our individual journeys. It reminded me that independence and community are not mutually exclusive. Rather, they can coexist harmoniously if we nurture respectful boundaries and cultivate genuine connections. Through these shared experiences, I began realizing the vital role of adjusting to a new routine. Embracing this phase of my life was not simply about accepting it, it was about actively embodying it and weaving meaning into the fabric of our experiences. I encouraged others to embrace similar trials of adaptation, emphasizing that the sense of belonging we developed was rooted in our willingness to expand the boundaries of our existence. In every conversation and laughter shared, we chipped away at the moss of loneliness, welcoming new routines with open hearts and laughter. With this understanding, I have resolved to continue crafting a legacy of connection here at the Pines. A legacy not built on the golden memories of youth, but enriched by our ongoing stories as we bravely journey together, redefining what it means to thrive in our golden years. What new stories will we weave together as we embrace this chapter of our shared lives? As the weeks rolled on at the Pines, I began to notice something that was both surprising and disheartening. The financial burdens lurking like shadows in the corners of our lives. Unexpected expenses, those uninvited guests that could ruin an otherwise cheerful gathering, had begun to make their presence felt among us. It dawned on me how many of my friends had entered the retirement home with a lovely financial plan that now was being tested in ways we never anticipated. Just the other day, Frank shared how he'd been approached about the rising costs of medication. To think that it could be such a challenge for someone with such a zest for life was sobering. It reinforced the need for us to face these realities head-on, rather than shying away, so we could help navigate each other through the murky waters of retirement finances. I remember Mabel's face as she looked at her budget, her brow furrowing in concentration as she realized how close her funds were to hitting empty. "Oh, Eleanor," she sighed, her vibrant dress suddenly appearing less than colorful. "I did some math last night, and I'm worried that I might have to cut back on my floral arrangement supplies." Her disappointment struck a chord with me. I too had faced the reality of expenses that were not a part of my original plan. The costs of services like transportation to appointments, late fees for missed activities, and additional health care, it all adds up surprisingly quick. It was disheartening to see how these hidden costs could creep into the corners of our lives, compelling us to reevaluate our spending. I took it upon myself to communicate this with others in the community. Maybe we could organize a financial workshop to share resources, help each other budget, and demystify the hidden costs that seemed woven into retirement life, and thus began a whole new initiative at the Pines which I humorously termed Penny Wise Wednesdays. Each week, we met to share our experiences and advice, gathering around a table laden with cookies and tea, breathing life into our fears and empowering each other with insights. Frank would often chime in with a story from his travels about how budgeting had saved him on countless occasions, lending a lighthearted air to our sessions. It became clear to me that collectively confronting our financial realities transformed our sense of accomplishment into a community effort. Sharing our personal economies not only fortified everyone's knowledge, but also built deeper communal ties. As we took these steps to prepare for unforeseen expenses together, The looming worry seemed slightly less daunting, reminding us of the power of collective support in regaining a sense of control. However, amidst tackling the hard costs of retirement, one of the most significant emotional burdens was the poignant act of leaving behind our once beloved homes. I often found myself reminiscing about my charming little cottage, adorned with violets cascading down the porch, warm light glowing through its windows like a hug from the universe. The simple joy of curling up with a good book in my favorite armchair now felt like a distant dream. I remember sitting on the terrace at the Pines one evening, watching the beautiful sunset paint golden strokes across the horizon, and suddenly feeling a wave of melancholy wash over me. "This isn't home," I muttered, almost ashamed as tears pricked the corners of my eyes. I missed the familiar nooks and the memories that had seeped into the very walls of my old abode. Mabel sensed my heartache that evening, and soon we shared stories of our past homes. With every sputter of laughter and tear-filled confession, we forged an understanding that emotional costs remained a big part of this transition. We spoke of the importance of creating new routines that held echoes of our past selves. I suggested we begin infusing the Pines with personal touches from our old homes, perhaps hanging photos of our families in common areas, or fostering communal garden projects that mirrored our former gardens. Mabel's eyes shone at the thought. Within days, Frank joined us, charged with enthusiasm. He was ready to contribute colorful artwork to enliven the interiors. Our homes may have changed, but we could carry along our cherished memories and familiar elements as psychological anchors to root ourselves in the present. Together, our efforts blossomed into a project that galvanized the entire community, nurturing an atmosphere where memories and emotions intertwined seamlessly with our new surroundings. We hosted a memory lane event one sunny afternoon, inviting residents to exhibit cherished items from their previous homes. Filled with laughter, storytelling, and the aroma of baked goods, our shared gathering created a heartwarming canvas of connections across generations and preferences. The so-called old homesteaders of the Pines eagerly gestured towards framed photos of long-lost furry companions, pristine gardens, and traveling memorabilia. In those moments, we collectively jumped beyond feelings of isolation and nostalgia, constructing a shortcut to reconnection with our new environment while ensuring that our stories and the memories carried a sense of belonging through artfulness. As I looked around that day, feeling the warmth of budding friendships rekindled through nostalgia, I realized how vital it is to recognize that every change, though sometimes painful, could also breathe new life into our experiences. I wanted to encourage everyone to see that loss does not come without the promise of rediscovery. The essence of home is not tied strictly to a physical space. Rather, it resides in the memories we treasure and the love we share. As we collectively embraced our transformative journey, facing both hidden costs and emotional farewells with courage and resolve, I felt the heart of the Pines thrumming along with joy for the vibrant lives we continued to weave together. What other insightful revelations lay ahead in our journey of creating community, connection, and home? As the weeks passed, the spirit of interconnection at the Pines began to burgeon. Instinctively, we recognized that tackling our insecurities together fostered resilience amid the challenges of transition. One Wednesday, as I sat with Frank and Mabel discussing plans for upcoming activities, I revealed my personal struggle with feelings of isolation. For someone who lived such an active life, the quiet here can feel deafening at times, I confessed. Frank nodded vigorously, his vibrant Hawaiian shirt moving with his earnestness. I used to be surrounded by people everywhere. Now, sometimes I feel like I'm shouting into the void. We all shared knowing smiles, and what started as an acknowledgement of our feelings transformed into a galvanizing impulse to pour our energy into creating new connections that would lift us above solitude. What struck me next was just how many residents were tucked away in their rooms, hesitant to step out and embrace the community around them. It reminded me of threads of fabric yet to be sewn together, each vibrant in their own way but missing the stitches that could weave intricate designs of togetherness. With renewed motivation, I proposed a Social Sundays initiative, where residents could partake in diverse activities like dance classes, crafting sessions, or informal coffee chats every week. I vividly remember the first Sunday when we gathered to share stories from our childhood, laughing and reminiscing about the simpler times in life. Amidst the humor, I saw that each heartfelt tale became a thread binding us closer. Each participant not only shared laughter, but also unveiled layers of their lives that had remained hidden for too long. An impromptu friendship blossomed over that first cup of coffee when Marjorie, a quiet lady from across the hall, opened up to Mabel about her love for baking. "I'd love to teach a class sometime," she whispered, her cheeks flushing with excitement. That simple spark led to our first baking bash, where we witnessed the magic of collaboration. Flour dust in the air, giggles flowing freely, and the aroma of freshly baked goods weaving through the hallways. It became a lively focal point, drawing even the shyest residents out of their shells as we stirred dough and shared recipes. Each month, those Sundays turned into vibrant platforms for connection, building solid friendships that radiated across our community, with voices filled with laughter, wisdom, and newfound purpose. However, it wasn't just the penchant for baking or dancing that united us. We soon realized the astonishing power of shared vulnerability, a poignant avenue leading to deeper connections. After one particularly impactful session discussing our fears and hopes, Frank, with his twinkling eyes, misted ever so slightly, candidly shared, "I didn't think I'd ever find joy again after leaving my home." His honesty struck a chord with everyone present, revealing that each of us had intersecting paths woven in grief and laughter. The importance of compassion emerged as a thread connecting us to one another. As we stood together in this shared experience, it became evident that facing our isolation openly transformed our understanding of friendship and community. A new layer of solidarity built within us. One evening, it struck me how our dynamic had shifted. We were no longer just residents coexisting within the Pines. We were friends and community members engaged in a mutual journey, celebrating birthdays, sharing stories, embracing communal gardening projects, and devoting time to craft initiatives provided us purposeful joy. Like Frank's adventurous photographs once captured the world, our growing bonds illuminated a vibrant world within the retirement home. It was as if every shared meal, laughter, and embraced moment sculpted us into a family, entangled in our history, dedicated to each other. Such depth revealed that decreasing isolation meant cultivating connections and community, transforming the Pines into a place of warmth and resonance. It can often be easy to forget that joy is deeply rooted in collaboration and support, particularly in new environments. As I reflected on the meaningful experiences we created, I felt empowered to further emphasize the importance of stepping outside of our comfort zones, encouraging not just a thriving environment, but an enlivened space where all could flourish. I beckoned everyone to remember that seeking friendships takes courage, a willingness to reveal pieces of oneself while being ready to embrace the ever-changing nature of our lives. Amidst this beautiful collective awakening, we began inspiring one another to share dreams, cultivate passions, and hold each other up, reminding us that being vulnerable was truly a shared strength. The Pines transitioned from a mere retirement home into a tapestry of vibrant life, connection, and legacy. Armed with inspiration from my journey and the blossoming friendships, I felt something intense, an exhilarating sense of belonging. I understood that we weren't just covering the emotional costs of isolation, we were embracing the beauty of a life intertwined with purpose and laughter. Sometimes it takes stepping onto rocky terrain to discover scenic vistas, and through community engagement, I learned to reclaim joy amidst the uncertainties that life presented. The irony, I realized, is that within the moment of facing regrets, we unknowingly open doors to new beginnings and possibilities that previously seemed absent. As I looked around, witnessing laughter and connection bloom, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the vibrant tapestry made by each unique thread woven in